The Pothumous portrait is probably the most difficult and most frustrating commission the portrait artist will ever encounter. It's difficult enough when you have the subject before you, to study, to photograph, to draw. But without that process, you're left with nothing but available photography, usually inadequate, and perhaps the descriptive comments of family and friends. When you finally do acquire reference material that you feel can make a painting, then how you interpret that material is paramount. In this video, we're going to take you through the process of a relatively difficult and rather complicated commission. It should be interesting. Please join me. This painting is commissioned by Ford. Edsel Ford called me and wanted me to do a portrait of Henry Ford first and Dr. George Washington Carver for dedication of the new library at Tuskegee University. In order to get started, I had to contact Tuskegee University and Ford and get all the available historical photography that they could supply to me. And this is basically what I've culled it down to. There's a half a dozen shots here. Some details on both Dr. Carver and Henry Ford. This is, of course, not usable as a painting. It's simply a candid photograph. They're both staring out at you doing nothing. I found this photograph. I got it from Tuskegee University, and this will make a painting. It'll take a lot of editing, and it'll have to be rearranged for composition somewhat, but it can work. The size of this particular portrait has been established at 30 by 30 inches. Now, I always use linen canvas because it's more durable, it's higher quality as opposed to cotton duck. The bracing of this size is, as you can see, it's braced because you don't want it twisting and turning. It gives it stability, and it doesn't add that much more weight. The first thing, of course, as soon as I get this stretched and set up, is to tone it and start my drawing. I have this canvas prepared for me to absolute specifications. And then I tone the canvas with a number wash in this case. Simply to take the curse off the stark white canvas and to give the pigments that I use, the paint that I use, something to marry to, because this is the same paint that I use to make the painting. And it's kind of, it gives me a good base to paint into. A full day has been spent on this drawing, taking careful measurements, locating the heads particularly where you want them so that they work together, taking all this clutter from the table, my copy. It's just not artistically valid. Dr. Carver was a botanist, and it looks like he has a vase of winter asters on the table now, so I will open that up a little bit, use a glass vase. I've taken the oil lamp off the table and wound up with a small little still life of a couple of books and a candle holder here, and that should work very well. I moved the window over a little bit because one of the things I want to achieve is Dr. Carver is, of course, a black man, and I want this area behind him to be relatively light. And Henry Ford has a very light complexion, and I will put him against a dark wall, and that should bring each of them out from the painting. The rest of it's fairly academic. The curtains I've refined and simplified. The door I've taken out. I've closed them together a little more than my copy shows, make it slightly more dynamic. And now that the drawing is basically there, I will start first laying in the darkest of the dark values. What I'm doing right now is laying in the darkest values, the blacks of the painting. And that gives me a basis to key the rest of the values to. And this is basically just nothing but underpainting. None of this will remain, or very little, if any, will remain. It's like painting a wall, you know. The idea is to use the biggest brush you can. This is Of course, at this stage, it doesn't really matter that much. The value is the intensity of the amount of light that is striking the color. How light or how dark the color is, value to me at this point has nothing much to do with color, although color is important. There's a color intensity that has to do with the composition, and there's also the value, the amount of light that strikes the surface of the area. I'm not concerned about the